Washington, Senator John Cornyn is sounding the alarm over the fate of future Hurricane Harvey relief aid for Texas. Despite assurances from the White House and House leaders that Texas could see a request for fresh disaster relief funds taken up sometime in November, the number 2 Republican in the Senate is worried the measure could be rolled into a politically perilous omnibus spending bill in December. At some point, the omnibus bill gets so big that we won't be able to get the votes to pass it, he said in a conference call with Texas reporters. That could result in Congress passing a stopgap spending bill, he said, which means that Texas and other disaster areas will not get the relief that we've been promised even in December. President Donald Trump has been magnanimous in his support for Texas. But Cornyn said Wednesday that the House has been discouraged from meeting the needs of Texas, at least on a pace that we would like to see, though it is promised to do that in this next supplemental. What I worry about is a lot of things are happening in the interim, other natural disasters, so there are more rivals for whatever the federal government ultimately comes up with, Cornyn said. U.S. Senate Majority Whip Senator John Cornyn, R. Texas, prepares to speak to members of the media with Senator John Thune, left, RSD, and Senator Pat Toomey, R. Pennsylvania, outside the West Wing of the White House after a meeting with President Donald Trump on October 18, 2017. Olivier Dowlier TNS, U.S. Senate Majority Whip Senator John Cornyn, R. Texas, prepares to speak to members of the media with Senator John Thune, left, RSD, and Senator Pat Toomey, R. Pennsylvania, outside the West Wing of the White House after a meeting with President Donald Trump on October 18, 2017. Olivier Dowlier TNS, his warning comes as Texas Governor Greg Abbott is lobbying for nearly $61 billion in Harvey relief aid, funds that he says are critical in helping Houston and coastal areas rebuild from massive storms and flooding, but that also would go to infrastructure projects intended to fortify the state against future disasters. On Tuesday, the governor met in Washington with the Office of Management and Budget, Senate, and House leaders, as well as the Texas congressional delegation. In a conference call with reporters Wednesday, Abbott said he presented the federal officials with a 300-page document containing a list of projects ranging from rebuilding roads, public buildings and schools to major flood prevention infrastructure projects. Abbott said his plan received robust support from Cornyn and Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell was sympathetic, he said, but expressed concerns about the timing and the process. Abbott, who plans to return to Washington the week of November 13 for more Harvey aid meetings and a fundraiser headlined by Vice President Mike Pence, said Budget Director Mick Mulvaney told him he expected to present Congress with a supplemental disaster funding package by November 15. The timing of a vote on it, however, is less certain. We understand that this is going to be a multi-step process, Abbott said Wednesday. And we hope when the process is completed, Texas will receive all the funding we need. Earlier this month, Speaker Paul Ryan phoned a frustrated Abbott to assure him that the House would take up a Texas disaster relief package as early as November. It's unclear, however, if Ryan indicated whether it would be voted on as a standalone measure, which Cornyn prefers. A spokesperson for Ryan could not be immediately reached for comment. House members all but uniformly say they want to deliver aid to Texas as soon as possible, but that they must follow the rules governing emergency spending bills and disaster relief aid. Houston Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, a Democrat, said Cornyn's fears that an omnibus bill could lead to a stopgap spending bill are legitimate as it could come at the end of the year. I think what the senator is talking about is people will want to kick it down the road, and that's dangerous, she said. But if an omnibus could move, it's a vehicle we should utilize, she said, adding that Trump's support would help in that process. I'm only going on the words he gave to us when he landed in the midst of Hurricane Harvey, and that was that we are going to make you whole. Congress has already passed a series of emergency spending bills to aid Texas and other areas. In September, it approved a $15.3 billion measure and later passed a series of tax-related measures intended to help those affected by disasters. This month, Congress also approved a $36.5 billion emergency spending bill, with Texas poised to see $15 billion in aid, about $11 billion in anticipated flood claims, and $4 billion in FEMA disaster relief dollars, according to figures released by Texas Republicans on the House Appropriations Committee. Separately, Abbott said he squeezed in a visit with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and White House Chief of Staff John Kelly on Tuesday to voice his concerns about the president's negotiations with Mexico on the North American Free Trade Act. Abbott said although he understands Trump's desire to update the decades-old agreement, NAFTA remains critical for the Texas economy. Mexico is Texas's largest trading partner, and any changes to the agreement could have major ramifications for Texas jobs and companies, he said. If the NAFTA negotiation does not work well, it will mean that people will be losing jobs and the economy will be negatively affected, he said. It's important that we get this right. Austin Bureau Chief Brandy Grissom contributed to this report.